everybody.
No.
Welcome to my kitchen, also known as my happy place. Today we're going to make sweet and sour pork. We found a deal on some boneless pork sirloin chops. $2.45 for almost a pound and a half of meat. We'll make more than enough to feed 2 people. I'm going to chop it up into about 1-inch chunks. And I'm going to season it with salt and pepper. And then I'm going to dredge it in some cornstarch and give them a quick little deep fry.
What did you just turn on?
I just turned on the oil in my wok. And I'm going to heat it to probably 325, 350. I don't usually put the thermometer in. I just kind of see if it's hot.
Okay.
Put the meat in. So just gonna chop this up. Super tender, super lean.
I see you cut up your vegetables.
Yeah, okay. Prior to now, I've cut up a red bell pepper, a green bell pepper, a sweet onion, like a Vidalia. That's what I usually use. Some celery, carrots, and then I have drained a can of pineapple chunks.
Okay.
I reserved the juice because I'll add it in with the vegetables and thicken it a little bit before I add the pork back in. My cornstarch, I'm going to be flavoring with some of these liquid aminos. They taste just like soy sauce. They're gluten-free, and I use it all the time in place of soy sauce. And then I have some sweet and sour sauce that we got at the store. You can make your own. This one is fine. It's delicious. It tastes just like the red stuff, only it doesn't have food coloring in it. So we're gonna give that one a try. So while my oil's heating, chop up my pork here. I'm gonna season it with salt and pepper, which I think is the best seasoning for pork. No matter. Got my pork all chopped into about 1-inch chunks. I'm going to season it with salt. Not too heavily on the salt, but it's quite a bit of meat, so you want to be able to taste it. If you season it while you're cooking instead of after it's done, like when you've put it on your plate, you'll taste the seasoning. You won't taste the salt. If you salt your food as you're serving it, then you will taste the salt. And then I'm going to sprinkle some cornstarch over it. It's probably a couple tablespoons.
Why?
Gives it kind of a nice crispy crust without making a batter or a breading. Just gives it a little bit extra crisp when you drop it into the hot oil. So as soon as the oil's hot enough,
You gotta mix that up.
I'm going to mix this up. My little granny fork here. Just kind of smear it around. You don't want it to be soupy, so you don't need to, you don't want to mix the cornstarch with anything. Just want to put it on the moist meat. And just kind of dredge it around. I'm going to start my rice while the oil's heating up. We eat minute rice. We like minute rice. You can use any kind of rice that you like. If you have a rice cooker, they work really good. Just doing plain water, plain rice. I usually put a little rice wine vinegar into the water. It helps keep the grains of rice separate, even though it's minute rice, and it usually turns out perfect every time. So as soon as that comes to a boil, I'll add the rice. Okay, the water's coming to a boil for my rice. What you do with minute rice, if you've never cooked it before, bring your water to a boil or your liquid to a boil, chicken broth, whatever you're gonna boil your rice in. Pour the rice in, stir it around, take it off the heat, put a lid on it. And in 5 to 10 minutes, it doesn't take 10 minutes, 5 minutes, it'll be done, flaky, separate grains of rice.
Rolling boil? Rolling boil?
Yeah, pretty rolling boil, not super hard. Just a dash of rice vinegar. Little dash.
Why?
Because it helps keep the rice grains of rice separate. I said that already. Stir it around with your fork. Lid back on, burner off, and then if you're cooking on an electric stove, you need to move the pan off the heat. If you're on gas, you can just turn off the burner. Okay, so we're ready to start frying the pork. The oil is about 325, 350. I'm going to drop it in a few cubes at a time.
What kind of oil?
It's just vegetable oil. You don't want to crowd it, but a pan this size, I should be able to get them all in. It takes 5 to 7 minutes with pork. You could use boneless, skinless chicken thighs. You could use chicken breasts, shrimp, I've never had sweet and sour beef, but you could just about substitute any protein you want, whatever your family likes. And since we found such a good buy on the pork, we're using pork this time. I'm going to separate them as they fry. When these are done, I'm going to scoop them out of the oil, set them aside, let them rest. Remove most of the oil from my wok. And then I'm going to saute the vegetables and make the sweet and sour sauce. I don't want to shuffle them around a little bit so they are separate. Okay, they're about halfway done, getting a little brown. You want to make sure they're done all the way through. When they completely float up to the top, then that usually indicates that whatever you're frying is hot all the way through the middle. Okay, the pork is done. See the crispy from the cornstarch? Just put them in to drain in a paper towel lined baking dish, and I'm going to cover them with foil. They'll continue to cook a little bit, but they won't get soggy. And then once I get the vegetables done, I'll add the pork back in. So those have been cooking about 7 or 8 minutes, I think. Stop it. Okay. I've removed most of the grease, most of the oil from my wok. And I've turned my heat down a little bit because I don't want it to be too hot. I'm going to saute the vegetables, make the sauce, we'll add the pork back into it, and then we'll be ready to serve. I'm going to start with the carrots and the celery because they take the longest to soften up. You want them to be cooked, but not mushy. So, I'm going to stir fry them 5 or 6 minutes. Once those get started, then I'll add the onion. Actually, I'll just add the onion right now because it takes a little bit too. I'll give them a few minutes to get started. We're going to season these with some salt. Not a lot because the aminos are pretty salty. A little bit of pepper. And if you prefer, you can do a little bit of red pepper flakes. I'm going to leave them out. No? Maybe we'll do those today too. Who doesn't need a little spice, right? Just a few because they are pretty potent. Adds a little bit of heat, but not like a pepper pot. Got my heat on medium high. And you don't want to, you want to get all those yummy bits off the bottom of the wok. And you can do this in a big fry pan. Doesn't have to be a wok. Wok gives you plenty of room. Put on the vegetables for just a few minutes to let them steam so they get a little tender but not mushy. Okay, see how this is thickened up? Only took just a couple minutes with the lid on. Real silky and thick and yummy. Okay, I'm going to turn the heat off. I'm going to add the pork back in. It's still pretty hot, but I'm going to warm it all the way through and get it covered in sauce. Better than takeout, just like downtown. Ready to serve. See, the rice has turned out just perfect. It's separate grains, all the way cooked all the way through. Some rice in the bottom. And then top with our sweet sour lusciousness. Pineapple, peppers, onions, celery, and
Cook. You taste.
I will. I'm going to top with a little bit of chopped scallions. This is totally optional. Just kind of finishes it off, adds a little crispness. Get a fork here. And give it a taste. Start with a bite of the pork. Savory. Pork's tender, juicy,
Sweet.
sweet. A hint of sourness to the sauce. It's delicious.